Hi, welcome back to Serger Tip Clips. Over the holidays, my sister and her husband were staying with us, and my sister wanted a circular table to have a tablecloth over it, which also involved having a circular hem on it. Now, typically, when I do hemming on, say, a gourd hem or a circle, I usually resort to a rolled hem or a narrow 3-thread. But in this case, because the fabric was lightweight, I wanted to do a 1-inch hem to give it a little more weight and let it drape. But as you know, it's kind of difficult to do a traditional hem when you're working in a circle. But I found a great way to use differential feed so that you get a perfect arc with no little points or pleats that show on the outside. And it's smooth, it's super easy to do, and I think you're going to love this technique. So let's get started. Now, I only had scraps of fabric. When I did this for my sister, I was using a 78-inch round circumference, which was way too much to handle for a tip clip. So I scaled it way down so that it would be much more manageable. But when I was playing around with my practice stitching, I didn't have a lot of the scrap fabric left over. So if you find yourself in that situation, let me just show you what I used. As long as you have pieces that you can just mimic partial parts of your arc on, that's all that really matters. So I had a couple, and on this one I just did a straight stitch around it. But I just cut out as wide an arc as I could get out of the various scraps just to test my differential feed and my stitch length and all of that. So I'm at the machine, and I cut a little mini starting gate right here. It's only about 1/8 of an inch in because I really only want to trim off a tiny, tiny bit of the perimeter of this because it's been measured. And so I'm going to put that in, and let me give you the machine setup. Now, the typical way of doing gathering on fabric is with a 4-thread overlock, 2 needles, the upper and lower loopers threaded. But because I only want a very soft gather, I experimented and did this with a 3-thread narrow. So I have my right needle threaded, and I have my upper and lower loopers threaded. My stitch length is just a little above 2, a little longer than 2. Most of the time when you gather, you have your stitch length up at least at 3.5, usually at 4. But I do have my differential feed at 2 because with the 3 threads, it won't gather as tightly as it would with a 4-thread. So I'm going to put that little starting gate right up by the knife, put my presser foot down, and start stitching. And I'm just going to stitch around and just kind of skim off a tiny, tiny scant 1/8 inch of the edge. So I'll go around, and you'll see a soft gather. Now, as I'm coming to the very end, I'm going to clip off that starting thread chain. And as my knife approaches these beginning stitches, then I'm going to stop and lock my knife so it doesn't trim off any of the threads and cut them. So I'm going to slow down. Okay, I'm going to lock my knife. And I can just clip. I just overlapped a few little stitches. But can you see how that cups the edge under so perfectly? It's just such a cool technique. I love this. Okay, we've serged around the whole perimeter of the circle, and you can see how beautifully the fabric cups under all by itself. So now it's time to just press our little 1-inch hem, and we want to just be kind of careful just to make it as uniform as possible. So I'll just go around and get this pressed. Okay, so now you can see a perfectly pressed edge on this circle, and then you can choose your mode of hemming. I just did I went to my sewing machine and just did a straight stitch on that. But if you want to use a cover stitch on your serger, you certainly could. Decorative stitching, whatever you like to do. Thanks for joining me today. And as always, if you have questions or suggestions, just send them along to Gail at gailpatrice.com. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.